Alright, so hey guys, and welcome to my Kitgun conclusion. The idea for this video actually came from the comments where someone was asking if I could possibly make a video where I would talk about all the Kitgun chambers and it wouldn't be as disjointed as the quick look videos, and I thought that was a really good idea, especially since some of the Kitguns that I've made were objectively subpar and I would have made them differently if I were to build them again. And let's start off with the chamber that I would personally recommend you build your first Kitgun with, and that is the Kachamoon. And the setup I would recommend you build is what I decided to dub the Doomshroom setup, where you have the Kachamoon chamber, the Haymaker grip, and the Killstream loader. This Kitgun uses the Arcaplasmor light projectile. It has very high impact and heat damage per shot, extremely high crit chance with an above average crit multiplier, and decent status chance with pretty good reload as well. The only issue that I found with this Kitgun is that while the projectile will fly straight to enemies, dealing an insane amount of damage, it doesn't seem to be able to pierce through any kind of terrain, and the projectile is pretty big, so it's very easy to clip the side of like a barrel or something and have the projectile disappear. But that's the only sort of downside that I found with this particular Kitgun setup. The parts aren't very expensive, and the build doesn't necessarily have to be expensive either, because this weapon will tear through the entire game even with just a basic crit setup. You don't even have to use any of the Kitgun arcanes to get it working well, but they're definitely a nice bonus if you have them. So once again, the Kachamoon chamber with the Doomshroom setup would definitely be my #1 recommendation when it comes to building Kitguns. My second recommendation would be essentially the same setup but with the Tombfinger chamber instead. This is the Kitgun setup that I use in my quick look video. Now this Kitgun setup is going to fire a single projectile that also does a lot of damage per shot. Most of it is radiation and it has some impact and puncture as well. And the projectile will explode on impact, doing a little bit of splash damage to nearby enemies, though luckily it does not do self-damage, which is very nice. And since it is also using the Haymaker grip and the Killstream loader, it comes with an extremely high critical chance, above average critical multiplier, decent status chance, and pretty fast reload. Now the reason why I put this one at #2 rather than #1, even though it's probably my favorite and most well-rounded Kitgun setup, is that while the single target damage is good, the clear with this weapon isn't that great until you get Pack Seeker, ideally at maximum rank, which is like, what, 100,000 standing with the Solaris United at the rank of Old Mate if you want to max it out, which is quite the investment. And even though the Killstream loader requires you to be the second to last rank with the Solaris United, it's only 4,000 standing, which is quite the difference. And it's also because the build is a little bit harder to put together, because while it is a standard crit build, I would also recommend you use hydraulic crosshairs on this one, which is a little bit harder to get. With that said though, hydraulic crosshairs aren't entirely necessary, so if you don't have them, you can just use a standard crit build, and if you have Pack Seeker, I would actually move this over to #1, because as I've said already, this is probably my favorite Kitgun setup and it's the most well-rounded one. In at #3, we have the Ratogats, where I would actually recommend a different setup to the one I used in my quick look video. So I would go with the Ratogats chamber of course, but I would use the Love Tap grip and the Slap Needle loader. This will give you a fully automatic secondary pistol that has radiation on top of all 3 of the physical damage types. It has pretty good crit chance with a slightly above average crit multiplier, good enough status chance for a secondary weapon since they have access to more multi-shot, decent fire rate, and very quick reload. Now the build I would use on this one is just a straight up hybrid with ideally primed crit mods and 3 dual stat mods. This will give you a hybrid pistol that's good enough on its own, but it's amazing when used alongside a condition overload glyph, because all the different status procs will allow you to multiply your melee damage by ludicrous amounts. And finally, while I don't think any of the arcanes are particularly necessary, Pack Seeker is of course very good because it does a nice chunk of damage, but it will also help you spread status around, and if you're running into ammo issues, you can use Pack's Charge instead. And last but not least, we have the Gaze, where, just like with the previous Kitgun, I would actually use a different setup to the one I used in the quick look video. So I would of course go for the Gaze chamber, but I would use the Haymaker grip and the Slap loader. This will give you a secondary beam pistol with a decent amount of range, though not an overwhelming amount of damage. It will only do 20 damage per tick split between radiation and puncture, but it will have 25% crit and status chance, a standard 2x crit multiplier, fire 12 rounds per second, and have a very fast 1.3 second reload. Now the setup I would use for this one is of course a hybrid build, and you either want to go with 3 dual stat mods if you want to use it alongside a condition overload glyph, or 2 dual stat mods and hydraulic crosshairs on top of your crit mods if you want to use it on its own. The reason why this one is at #4, even though it's not a terrible weapon by any means, is that the ammo economy is bad and there is not much you can do about it. You're just gonna have to use Pack's Charge to recharge your ammo, run Carrier all the time to mutate ammo for you, or just straight up run Pistol Ammo Mutation, which means you have to sacrifice a mod and nerf your damage. Now, while ammo sustain can sometimes be an issue with the Ratogats chamber as well, here it is always going to be an issue, because the fire rate is always at 12 rounds per second regardless of what parts you put onto the weapon, and on top of that you're also gonna increase it even further with Lethal Torrent because you want the multi-shot. So So this is the only chamber that has a straight up downside, which is why I decided to put it at number 4. However, these are just my personal recommendation. It's what I found works for me. There is a reason why the system was made modular. It's so you can play with different parts, find what you like and use that. So if you watched my other videos and you know that I don't like the type of weapons that you do and vice versa, these might not be the best for you. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say, so I thank you very much for watching. As always guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video and it was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.
Sons and daughters